This video should outrage the carnivore fanatics, and I know I'm going to get a lot of heated comments. If you get a benefit, and many don't, it is most likely that it is only temporary, and even more so, sets you up for a worse condition down the road.
Does the carnivore diet have long-term problems? Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and welcome back to my channel where I review and debunk nutritional misinformation online. In this video, we're going to hear from a microbiome expert who thinks that the carnivore diet is not a good idea in the long run. Let's hear what he has to say, and be sure to wait till the end where I give my final thoughts. Before we jump into today's video, I would like to invite you to join my free course, Start Keto Right. If you're ready to lose weight, boost your energy, and get real results, this science-backed method will help you every step of the way. No guesswork, just a proven method to help you succeed on keto faster and feel amazing. Sign up through the link in the description.
This video should outrage the carnivore fanatics, and I know I'm going to get a lot of heated comments. However, all of my videos are highly referenced to include this one. It's not like I'm just making this stuff up, and I have no experience in the matter. With over 20 years in the industry, and as the former head of medical education for a microbiome firm, and now with my own platform, I understand the science and data points like no one else, and I use that to help legions of people. If you want to bury your head in the sand, knock yourself out. But for the vast majority who are open to logic and critical thought, keep on watching. You may find the information of use. I will start by saying that there are some people who get relief from the carnivore diet. I'm not going to dismiss that.
Well, so always consider the source. And this is Guy Daniels, who is self-proclaimed microbiome expert of the world, which he may be. And I don't know if he's a physician or not in a clinic using this information. That was unclear to me, but certainly has been in the microbiome world a long time and does consultations. So the idea of, if you want to know about a vegan diet, talk to a vegan promoter. If you want to know about a carnivore diet, talk to someone who uses the carnivore diet in the clinic, or a keto diet, someone in the clinic. Here we're going to hear from someone who's read papers, done studies on the microbiome. And I just have to say that for years I've been using, and other doctors have been using, low-carb keto diets without any worry about the microbiome. So I'm always looking for, is there something that I can add to the program that I already use, rather than, there's going to be some terrible discovery that is going to show that what I've been doing for 25 years is suddenly harmful. I just can't believe that that's true, because I would have seen it by now. But so let's see what a microbiome expert has to say about the carnivore diet.
There are also some people who get relief from probiotics and or fermented food, the low FODMAPs diet, the keto diet, antibiotics, and other measures. But if you get a benefit, and many don't, it is most likely that it is only temporary, and even more so, sets you up for a worse condition down the road.
So immediately I'm a little bit skeptical. I have been using for decades a diet where we're going to find out that it changes the microbiome. And this is an important point. Just because something has changed doesn't mean it's worse. And yet this is a common preconception or prejudging. If something is different, it must be worse. Or if I don't know about it, it can't be true, or it must be bad. And that's what I've seen through the years when people are trying to poke holes into something that works, create a long-term fear about something that works. Oh, it'll work now, but wait till later. And let's see what kind of information is making him be so sure about his conclusion.
Let's first look at some of the epidemiological evidence. The diet and microbiomes of the centenarians, people who live to 100, are not those of pure carnivores. In fact, far from it. These people don't eat much animal protein, and in fact, they really don't eat that much at all. and their microbiomes are not reflective of a carnivore diet. The set of signals required for longevity.
So let's unpack that a little bit. Because let's say you study people who live to 100 years old, centenarians, because they've been eating a certain way or have a certain microbiome, doesn't mean that a different approach that has a different microbiome is necessarily worse. But that's the assumption, isn't it? So that if we're studying the world and those who have free access to every food gravitate toward a certain pattern of eating because they know it's going to make them live longer, I don't think that's the case. So there actually may be a way of eating that's better than what we see in centenarians. And the common theme that I've seen in the research about those who live a long time is, yeah, they eat less over time. The idea that you don't want to eat more and more as you get older, you want to eat less and less, I think is a common theme. And then the idea that insulin levels are low among centenarians is a common finding. So to me, I am less interested in what's on the plate in terms of the food, whether it's vegetarian, meatitarian, omnivorian. I'm more interested in what goes on inside the body, and including the microbiome. I'm very curious about that. But now to say that the microbiome of centenarians is not those of a carnivore, therefore carnivore won't let you live to 100 years old, is not really sound logic.
Such as the sirtuin pathway, are quite different than the set of signals that the carnivore diet provides, such as high mTOR. And if we want to stay on the aging theme, one concern is osteoporosis. This paper comes from 1974, back when the original Eskimo diet was still intact. They had what is essentially a carnivore diet, eating caribou, sea mammals, fish, and birds as their staple foods. Now you may say that their osteoporosis could be due to a vitamin D deficiency, but that was ruled out. The authors concluded that, quote, the acidic effect of a meat diet, presumably as related to oxidation of sulfur rather than handling of organic phosphates, appears to be more likely the factor. It has been long known that acidosis increases calcium excretion and causes bone dissolution. And it has been supposed that bone serves as a homeostatic buffer. In humans, a high-protein diet, even with controlled intakes of calcium and phosphorus, greatly increases urinary calcium and causes negative balance. This is something I talked about in my video on pH, which has mountains of data to support it. But honestly, living to 100 and osteoporosis are not on the minds of most people on the carnivore diet.
Well, now hang on. So there's a study from the 1970s, 50 years ago, that has there been any replication about those who just eat meat? I don't think so. I mean, he's the world expert on this. He's coming out with a video that's against a carnivore diet for microbiome reasons, but he's looking for osteoporosis in other people. We just don't see that. So there's a bit of fear mongering going on here so I want a study where we're following people today, where we assess what's happening to them now, not in the 1970s, that was the Inuit diet, even they didn't live in the modern era or in the US for that matter. But so that one, I just can't put much credence into it. If it was a strong signal, certainly over the last 50 years, there would have been another study, I think.
They have two main reasons. One is for weight loss, and it does work. But you need to support the microbiome for either the keto or carnivore diet, and it should not be a long-term thing.
I don't understand that statement. I've been using a low-carb, keto, carnivore-ish diet for over 25 years in the research and clinical setting without regard to the microbiome. Something in the food that's being consumed by my patients, not only is it weight loss, it reverses type 2 diabetes and all sorts of medical issues that drugs can't always fix. Drugs often just manage the problems. So I'm afraid he's getting a little out of his league here in terms of the clinical relevance of what we see. And we haven't been using anything in regard to the microbiome. Well, we've changed the food, which changes the microbiome for sure. And so if someone goes from a typical American diet to a carnivore or keto kind of diet, the microbiome will change. that's been documented, isn't necessarily bad.
The second is due to a condition or illness, usually centered around gut health. These people tend to be highly reactive to plant components, such as salicylates or oxalates, with high histamine, GERD, SIBO, diarrhea, constipation, skin reactions, you name it. And I will admit that there are a number of compounds within plants that can be problematic. You have to ask yourself, why are you immunoreactive to these compounds while most of us are not? Instead of radically limiting your diet by following the carnivore or low FODMAPs approach, you need to address the root cause, the source of the dysfunctional immune system.
Well, so that's a tough one. Most doctors don't have the time or inclination to get into the root causes of things, and that's very admirable that he is. He's seeing people one-on-one. The clinical doctors tend to gravitate toward drug treatment of things because it's quick and easy. We don't always know the root cause. I certainly agree that getting to the root cause of inflammation, if that's the cause of the problem, is a great goal. And yet if you drop the vegetables and you take away the symptoms and you, for example, have psoriatic arthritis condition or some other that's leading to the inflammation, at least you're reducing inflammation. So this is a very interesting logic where just keep eating the foods that cause some inflammation, the vegetables, and let's find other reasons for the inflammation so that you can continue to eat foods that cause inflammation well, wait a minute. So inflammation is kind of like a cup. If you have more inflammation and the cup runs over, you'll have symptoms. So why not cut out sources of inflammation in the food if that's part of the problem going on? I don't understand that logic.
And this starts in the gut, where dysbiosis drives inflammation, gut permeability, and systemic immune responses. So let's see what the carnivore diet does from a few papers. In this study with 19 healthy obese subjects, the high-protein diets significantly reduced the abundance of Roseburia and Erectile. If you're familiar with my videos, you know I'm always raving about these two superstars of the microbiome. And why were they reduced? Because their fuels were removed from the diet, and the environment, shifted out of their favor. In this study, the high-protein, low-carb diet is highlighted in Table 2 and resulted in marked decreases in Roseburia and Erectile and significant increases in toxic compounds produced by protein fermentation, shown in Table 5, which led the authors to conclude, quote, after 4-week weight loss diets that were high in protein but reduced in total carbohydrates and fiber resulted in a significant decrease in fecal cancer protective metabolites and increased concentration of hazardous metabolites. Long-term adherence to such diets may increase risk of colonic disease. And here's another study.
Hang on. So a 4-week study. Now, you know, if you've been watching my video, you know, the video channel, YouTube channel, that there's a keto adaptation period where and a carnivore diet is a subtype of a keto diet. So if you're going to study something, and try results that are applicable to long-term use, you don't just study 2 weeks or even 4 weeks and say, look, that was taught to me when we were looking at a poster, you know, at 6 months, and the person said, well, what did you see at 6 months? Did it look good? They said, well, yeah, but we don't know what happened at 6 months and a day. And then the person I was with said, well, did it look bad at 6 months? I mean, was it, or did it, and the researcher said, no, it looked good at 6 months. Then why do you put such a caveat or you know, period there when it looked good? So often, you know, at 4 weeks, even if these changes are negative when you look at people in general, if the gut symptoms all got better, and the individual's, you know, GERD goes away, the heartburn goes away almost 100%. The inflammatory bowel diseases and irritable bowel diseases improve. Irritable bowel disease, IBS, is much more easy to fix than the inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, although there are some credible anecdotes about fixing those problems. So if someone's gut is better a month, and yet you see these changes that may have long-term, well, okay, that we don't know about the long term. We know about the short term and how it got better. Again, it's kind of this comparison, the logic of, well, if we have people who eat carbohydrates, here's what the microbiome looks like. And because you do a carnivore diet and it looks different, especially with those things we think are protecting cancers against cancer, well, what if the carnivore diet, elimination of the carbohydrates and insulin reduction and anti-inflammatory effects also prevent cancer in a different way? So now we're stuck into a model of the old paradigm model, thinking that if it changes from that, it must be bad. Well, there may be a new model. There may, like looking at metabolic syndrome instead of cholesterol in the blood. And so to just say, therefore it's bad, I don't buy that logic.
This time they labeled it the paleo diet. Keep in mind, in none of these examples were they truly zero-carb carnivore. These diets still had some prebiotics coming in the form of locked-up sugars. The diet labeled here as strict paleo had a dramatic increase in TMAO, a topic for a later video, but suffice it to say, a bad thing. The paleo diets also had significant reductions in bifidobacterium and roseburia. Many other studies also show significant reductions in bifidobacterium, coprococcus, arabromiae, and lactospira, all taxa I constantly rave about. This is further driving dysbiosis in your gut. So perhaps in the short term you feel fine on your new carnivore diet, but in time, the bad actors will further drive an inflammatory environment both within and outside of your gut.
So, did you hear that term, dysbiosis? It's now being defined as something different than is typically seen when someone eats carbohydrates. I don't think that's really the right term. Just say it's different than those who eat carbs. It's not necessarily bad, especially if the symptoms are improved. I would want the microbiome of the improved gut, and which reminds me of a conference I went to, a talk by a world's expert on the microbiome, and he put up a slide of a jungle and said, this is the beautiful microbiome, all the different colors and the different flora and fauna. And I was looking at it thinking, wow, that looks kind of dangerous to me. There's snakes and poisonous frogs and but I didn't say anything. So, and then he went, click, here's the microbiome on someone on a keto diet. And it was a barren desert. And I was reminded that, that's kind of calm. It's like going out to the southern West United States, and it looked like the desert, like a place where people go to resorts to relax. But the presenter was saying, look, there's not that same kind of colorful variety, microbiome, the bacteria, so it must be bad. Well, I went to a meeting that we put on in Phoenix the next week, and I said to people who live in the desert, gave them this story, and I said, do you think the desert isn't beautiful? And they all went, no, the desert is beautiful. The flowers are there, the beauty, the sun sets. So just because it's different than what we typically see, it's often thought of and labeled as bad. And even in a 4-week study, is that really going to be enough to have you stop a way of eating that has cured your diabetes and your high blood pressure and all these other medical issues? I am still not following the logic here.
A protein-rich environment drives inflammation and immune dysregulation, which then causes reactivity to food proteins that the rest of us don't react to. But here's the great news. When you put properly dosed and blended prebiotics into this mix, these problems are resolved simply by feeding the true health promoters. This paper illustrates nicely the major bacteria involved in butyrate production, which is key to health.
So I was waiting for it where, take this supplement, it'll fix it all. Getting into the concept of butyrate, that was fascinating to see this discovery that colon cells use this ketone-like substance, butyrate, which a short-chain fatty acid, and so actually you can get feeding of the colon cells with the food that it needs, the substances that it needs, nutrients it needs, through the blood. It doesn't have to come from the gut, but it has to come from the gut if you're not in the keto state. So, and this is a concept that I don't expect the old paradigm folks to really grasp, and that's okay.
This data from 2,387 samples from 3 continents highlights only the most abundant butyrate producers, which were detected in at least 70% of the subjects. Most of these prominent butyrate producers do so via fermenting carbohydrates. Of the 4 butyrate pathways, only 1 is via carbs, but it is the most prominent. 3 are via amino acids, i.e. protein fermentation, but they are in the minority. And in a further breakdown of the carb pathway, you see many of the names I'm always raving about in my videos: F. prausnitzii, Carbococcus, E. rectale, Roseburia, E. hallei, Anaerostipes, and Eubacterium. And even within the amino acid butyrate producers, we see health promoters like Odoribacter, Acilibacter, and Allostipes. It is these bacteria you want to promote. And other than Allostipes, because Odoribacter and Acilibacter also possess acetyl-CoA pathways, you feed these health promoters with prebiotics, which have sugars locked behind bonds that we cannot access, but they can under the right circumstances. The goal of this video is not to inspire you to go vegan, far from it. I personally eat 2 eggs with breakfast, and my lunches and dinners always feature lamb, steak, chicken, pork, or fish if it's fresh. The idea is that if you are healthy, you need to balance your diet. If you're trying to lose weight, you need to support your microbiome while on a high protein, high fat diet for a limited amount of time. And if you are following the carnivore diet for a given condition, then you have to understand that you are immunologically reactive for a reason, and that reason is dysbiosis. And although the diet may or may not help in the short term, in the long term, you're creating an environment suited for the bad actors, inflammation, and more immune dysregulation. And in time, you may find that you'll react to more and more foods. Maybe it's time to try something more intelligent, something that addresses the root cause.
It's a very interesting video. Now, I honestly am not keeping up with the gut microbiome until there's a major discovery that will add value to a method that I've been studying and using without any regard to the gut microbiome at all. And fear-mongering that the gut microbiome on someone on a carnivore diet at a month is different than what we normally see is not really good logic. A couple thoughts. What's happening in the cholesterol world is that studies are being done on people who have super high cholesterols, and they're being sent to the best scanners to look at the coronary artery disease. People have been on a low-carb diet with LDL elevation for 5 years. So why not take self-proclaimed people who eat a carnivore diet, subject them to these kinds of studies, not just the biome studies, but how is the colon doing? Yeah, it might mean doing endoscopies, which means you volunteer to have study it's recommended you get a colonoscopy to screen for GI cancer periodically, and I'd recommend that just because it's an area that you can see with a tube and visualize. Why wouldn't we do that if you're very low risk for a problem? So instead of fear-mongering about, we got trouble if we do this for a long period of time, why not follow people who've had benefit and see over time, not just a month, but how about years? How about looking to see those who follow this way of eating for a long time, see what their gut bacteria look like, not prejudge that it's necessarily bad, but and actually there might be a change that goes back to what they expect to see in other people in the long run. And so anyway, I'm a little disappointed that he falls victim to, since it's different, it must be bad. And the idea of calling things bad and good, I've gone through in my lifetime the good and the bad cholesterol, and everyone believes that certainly, and it's not necessarily true. So there's a nuance to a lot of different things depending on the way you eat. Those who don't eat carbohydrate, including carnivore diets, have a different metabolism. There are going to be findings that are different, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. I hope you find this is helpful. If you like, please like, subscribe, ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on further content on Wednesdays and Fridays now. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and check out adaptyourlifeacademy.com.